Shadowkeep by Alan Dean Foster is the first computer game to be novelized. It's based on the 1984 first-person RPG for the Apple II. The book takes a few liberties with the source material that I think makes the book kind of stand out more, or at least stand out on its own. You have to remember, not everybody would have heard of the game before buying the book, and, it's kind of cool that the book was based on a game, even though it's not really necessary to have played the game in order to enjoy the book. There are two things I want to talk about specifically with this here. There's Shadowkeep the novel, and then Shadowkeep the game. So let's dig into the story, and we'll talk about the differences. So the book isn't really anything new. Like, they're not breaking any new ground or anything like that. You have a group of unlikely allies, and they join together in order to fight a big bad person who is trying to take over the world and spread evil throughout, apparently, multiple dimensions. So that's kind of interesting. It has a very predictable ending where they win, so yeah. It is kind of a fun story. I felt like this was a story I had read multiple times. It was told very well. Every character has a role in the story, and I think it was written pretty well. Everything gets developed very nicely. You know why these different races maybe don't trust each other very much, and you get a sense that they're not, like, all of the other people in the world are not necessarily as concerned as they should be with what's going on. It feels like everybody knows what's happening, but nobody really wants to do anything about it, or they don't want to join forces to actually take action. So we start off the book with this character called the Spinner, and it is making its way to a blacksmith shop. We don't get a whole lot of information about the Spinner. We know that it's from another dimension. It is aware of what's happening in Shadowkeep, and now it's trying to recruit a bunch of heroes in order to stop what's happening there, because it knows that the Demon King, Dalbrad, is going to kind of expand out from Shadowkeep, take over the world that we're on, and then take over other dimensions as well. It's also explained that the Spinner can't prevent this from happening because it doesn't have any real power in the world that Shadowkeep is in. It does talk about how the wizard, Gorewither, I think that's how it's pronounced, built Shadowkeep, accidentally summoned Dalbrand there, or allowed Dalbrand to come into the world that they're in, and just kind of seems blissfully ignorant of what's going on. And then Galwither gets captured. This name is going to be really freaking hard to get through, just so bear with me on that. Unfortunately, the Spinner's first choice says no, and he's stuck with Practor, who is the blacksmith's apprentice. Don't worry, it all works out in the end, because of course it does. But the characters don't know that at the time. The Spinner does say that it's going to send help, but never does, and it just kind of disappears from the book, which I thought was kind of weird, because he does mention that he's going to send aid and then just never does, but I'll dig into that later. So Practor leaves the city, and he goes out to just kind of head towards Shadowkeep after talking it over with his fiancée and a few other people along the way. It's rather interesting. Well, not really all that interesting, but it's a little bit different, sort of. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'll just move on. So he goes out, and the first race that he encounters are the Rue, which are a bunch of anthropomorphic rabbits. So bunnymen. Why not? And one of these bunnymen joins with him. And this rabbit guy is named Snarl, I think. Sranul. And he, at first, is pretty helpful, but it becomes very clear that he's going to be the liability. Like, he's kind of the weak link in the group. He's going with them not because he's interested in, saving the world or anything. He just wants treasure. What he's going to do with it, since the Rue are a nomadic race, we do get kind of told later on, but it's, whatever. So he meets up with the group of people that he needs to get together. So there is Snarl, who's a Rue. There is Mariled, who is an elf lady, or at least this world's version of an elf lady. And then there's Hargod. I think I'm saying that one right. If I said it wrong, I'll correct it later on. But he's a lizard man. So you have a rabbit, a blacksmith's apprentice, an elf, and a lizard man, and they go off to save the world. Awesome. And they run into just... Okay, I need to back up a little bit. So they make their way to Shadowkeep, and as they're going there, you get a sense that this world is in just an awful lot of trouble because they're passing by people who are fleeing from the vicinity of Shadowkeep. So there's like a little village or a city built up near Shadowkeep. And those people are fleeing, and they kind of meet them, and it's explained that, the evils in Shadowkeep are kind of coming out. So, like, Dalbrand is sending out scouts to figure out what's happening, and that's scaring most of the people away. It's kind of cool to see that, just because you get a sense of, okay, stuff's getting real. Like, they don't really have as much time as maybe they thought they did, but they still have enough time to wander aimlessly through this castle, which is kind of fun. So once they get inside Shadowkeep, that's when Snarl just really shows that he's a liability to this party, because he's just doing all kinds of stuff that's getting these people in trouble. He is setting off traps left and right, almost gets them killed like multiple times. He's just doing all kinds of shit that's getting these guys in trouble. And I kept reading this and thinking to myself, if he just died, everything would be better. Like this whole party would be so much better off if Snarl just died. They don't even really need Proctor either. They really just needed the elf lady and the lizard man, because the lizard man apparently can defeat anything here. You can go toe to toe with anything. And the elf lady is just incredibly observant and can spot all the traps and explain to the nice lizard man, hey, don't do that because you'll kill us all. I don't know why they're not really doing more to stop Snarl, but fuck it. But yeah, they don't... Sorry, I'm getting a little bit off track. But aside from Snarl trying to get them all killed, they run into a bunch of strange monsters that are both familiar and they're familiar because you've read them in other high fantasy novels, and then they'll throw some weird stuff at you that I had to look up to see if it was actually real. So you get the ghouls that are kind of expected to be in a creepy tower. You have a bunch of living dead and everything. Then you have a whole community of trolls that live there, which was kind of cool. They chase them throughout the whole place, so that was kind of interesting. Then it throws something at you called a Brolachan, which I had to look up because I didn't know if Alan had created this for the book or if this was a real thing. A real mythical thing. It's this big kind of blob monster that lives in a pool, and it's got a large mouth and tentacles and no eyes. And it was kind of cool because I looked it up on Google, and they apparently this is a thing, and it was kind of cool to see that, see the pictures of it and everything. So I was I don't think this is actually real, but or at least not a real thing that people would actually write about. So after they go through a whole bunch of different traps and everything, and they eventually get to where Gallweather is, they free him, and he explains that he died. So he's been in prison for a long time, and he apparently died, and then he explains how to defeat the Demon King, but doesn't really tell them exactly how they're going to do it. He just kind of sets them up to succeed, and is okay, when you'll know when to use this thing, you'll know when to do this. These are the things that you're going to need. Good luck, I'm dead, peace out. And then he kind of fades away from existence. So you have this incredibly powerful sorcerer that's able to stay in the realm of the living just from sheer will, which is kind of crazy to think about. He doesn't tell them that there are apparently two forms of Dalbrad. Well, there's the fake Dalbrad, and then there's like the real one. But we'll get to that in a second. The party gets teleported to like the Demon King's throne room, and they fight the first form of Dalbrad. And this was one of my favorite parts because this is where Snarl ends up dying. I know that's kind of mean, but I was glad he died. But don't celebrate too much because apparently some version of a Phoenix Down exists in this world, so he's going to come back. They managed to defeat like the fake Dalbrad, and that wakens up the real Dalbrad. So there was like this huge statue behind Dalbrad, or at least the person that they think it is. So that thing comes to life, and it's this massive creature and everything, and they're all ready to fight it, and then very anticlimactically, they just frickin' destroy him. They throw like their little magical gem into Dalbrad's mouth, it explodes, kills him, game's over. And then they go and they, for some godforsaken reason, bring Snarl back to life. I would have been perfectly happy if they had just left him dead, but, whatever. And then things kind of wrap up, and I was really wishing there was a second book to kind of talk more about this and everything. But no, there's not. So let's talk about some of the differences between the video game and the book. So there are some similarities between both the book and the game. They take place in the same world, they both have the same protagonist, you have the same, largely the same end goal, and the same pretty much location. They both end in Shadowkeep and everything like that. There are some minor differences with like the names used, and then the spelling of the names. So Practor is spelled differently in the book than it is in the game. The characters that Practor goes with, those are seemingly created for the book entirely, because you have a party of 4 in the book, you have a party of 10 in the game. And you're basically creating those extra characters. You always have Practor, but you have to create the other characters. As far as I can tell, the relationship between the different races was created for the book. I couldn't find a whole lot of information on the game with that, so I think Alan created that to basically expand the world, expand the lore, and it was a great addition to it. I think it made the book a lot more enjoyable to see, these 4 races don't normally work together. You have 2 kind of nomadic races, one's a semi-nomadic, the other one is nomadic. And then you have the elves, who just generally don't trust anyone. They're called something else, but they're elves, so just, whatever. And then the humans are just kind of doing their own thing, and even the humans are kind of separated in their own right. You have Practor, who's has his name spelled differently. His backstory is the same. The Gallweather is named differently. He is Nakamodon. So in the game, instead of Gorewither, it's, I think, Nakamodon, Nakomedon. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, fair enough. It's not spelled out phonetically anywhere, so whatever. And you also have Dalbrad as well. He's still the Demon King in both. One thing that I wasn't too sure, because I couldn't find a copy of the game to play this, and from the descriptions, it sounds like the game you just need to save the wizard, and then the wizard solves everything. I could be wrong on that, so if I am, please correct me in the comments. Aside from that, it seems pretty faithful to the game. So yeah, Alan did add stuff that made this world kind of feel a little bit more real and make more sense, at least from what I've read about the 2 different things. So yeah, just minor differences, but it seems to be a pretty faithful retelling of the game. So my likes and dislikes for this. First of all, I just didn't like Snarl at all. Not because I thought he didn't have a place in the book, but I just thought he was a jackass and kept on trying to get everybody killed. So I was kind of happy when he died, and a little bit less happy when he came back. Again, that's just me. Take it or leave it. I did like that they expanded on the game's lore in a really fun way. You got more like motivation for all these different characters, what they wanted. You kind of developed the different characters. It was pretty awesome. I really did like that. It wasn't anything too crazy, but you knew why everybody was there, what they were doing. You kind of got a sense of the stakes that were at play here. And yeah, I liked the majority of the characters here. Some weird stuff that I didn't really like. I didn't like the relationship between Marilyn and Proctor all that much. It was just something that wasn't really needed in the way that it was set there, because Proctor has his fiance, and it's pretty well established that he wants to kind of he's doing all this in some way for her, to kind of make her see him as a hero, but he also wants to save the world, that sort of thing. And then you've got him just kind of, not really him flirting with Marilyn, but Marilyn flirting pretty freaking hard with him, and him quote like commenting on how beautiful and everything she is. And it's not going to go anywhere, so it kind of was a little bit pointless to me. That was just something that I didn't think was really necessary, but again, you feel free to disagree with me. The spinner just frickin' disappearing from the book, I thought that was kind of annoying. Like how he says, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna send you help, don't worry, buddy," and then he's just gone and never sends help, and it's never frickin' commented on again. I was just sort of like, well, that's kind of annoying. And it did kind of make me wish that they had explored the character a little more, which probably would have needed another book or something like that, but yeah, whatever. It was just something that that was bugging me as I got to the end of the book. I'm like, so wait a minute, what happened to all the help that this jackass was supposed to send? But oh well. It would have been nice to have more of like a follow-up with what happened at the end, instead of just everything being wrapped up in just like a paragraph or two. But it did kind of the story kind of left me wanting more. Like, I wanted to know more about this world that Alan had kind of created and expanded upon. And I like that it made me want to go and look up more information on the video game, because this is one of the many video games that I didn't know about. So reading about the book first and then finding about the video game later was pretty awesome. Learning about this book and the video game that it was based on, it reminds me that there are so many books and video games that I just don't know about. Since I started looking into books about video games, I've discovered hundreds of new video games that I had never heard of. So they're new old video games. New to me, but they've been around for a while. It's been just a really fun experience. Shadowkeep is a fascinating book let me back up. Shadowkeep is a fascinating book in its place with its place in history of video game novelizations. That's just a mess of a sentence, and I have no idea why I wrote it that way. The book Shadowkeep it sits at a really interesting place for video games, especially with like the history of video game novelizations. It's one of the better books that I've read so far, especially when it comes to video game novels. But I started with the Worlds of Power books, so yeah, this one is like a step beyond those. Because this one isn't targeted to, at least I don't believe this one is targeted towards like a new readers or a young readers audience. This one is targeted more towards people who like high fantasy novels, that sort of thing. And I think it appeals to that pretty well. It did a great job of setting up the game's world, and it was just kind of a fun book to read. I do wish that there were sequels to it, but as far as I know, this was just kind of a one and done. But I could be missing something. I will always say that about any one of these books. There is a chance that I am missing something. So this was a lot of fun to read. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and definitely let me know if you know more about Shadowkeep, either the book or the video games. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.